Hi, and welcome to The Working Songwriter, the show where today's best songwriters come to talk shop. I'm your host, Joe Pug. Each episode here, we host a distinguished guest, and we ask them to go deep on their inspiration, on their process, on the general ups and downs of making a life in music. So, whether you're a grizzled veteran litigating against Arista Records for past due cassette royalties, or else a scrappy upstart hand-numbering cassettes for your post-punk emo album release, this is your show, because ultimately it is what every writer seeks most, an ironclad excuse to put off actually writing. Hey everybody, it's the third Friday of 2022, and I thank you for joining us. This week's show is brought to you by Bandzoogle. Built by musicians and for musicians, Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform to build a beautiful website for your music. I'm old enough to remember when you had to pay somebody called a web developer to get a website made, and it would always be some guy named Vincenzo who drove a Range Rover that had Smurfs airbrushed on the hood for some reason, and who was always trying to sell you crushed up Vicodin in a Fun Dip bag. And old Vincenzo would charge you about $1,000 for a website that would be obsolete in 6 months. But it's the future now, you guys. That's not how it works anymore. We're allowed to have nice things now. One of those nice things is Bandzoogle. Bandzoogle powers the websites of tens of thousands of musicians around the world, from weekend warriors to Grammy winners. All the features you need for a professional website are already built in. Hosting and a custom domain name, dozens of fully customizable design templates, tools to sell your music and merch commission-free. Listeners to the Working Songwriter podcast can go to bandzoogle.com to try it for free for 30 days. Use the promo code TWS to get 15% off the first year of any subscription. If you'd like to hear some of my music live in the coming weeks, the first Sunday night of every month at 9 p.m. Eastern, I'm over on my YouTube channel for Sunday Songs. That's a live stream. I'm live, I'm playing tunes, I'm taking questions in the live chat, I'm taking requests in the live chat. It's a really fun, really interactive experience. I dare to say that we're building something of a community over there, including many people who are listeners to this podcast. So come on over and be a part of it. The first Sunday night of every month at 9 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. Head on over to YouTube and search for Joe Pug, or go to joepugmusic.com and click on the live stream tab. Finally, if you enjoy this podcast, if you'd like to help it remain a viable endeavor for me, here's a couple things that you could do to help. First, you could become a supporter of the show over at Patreon. Patreon is a platform that allows you to directly support creative endeavors that you find meaningful. You just head to their site, Patreon. You search for The Working Songwriter, or you search for my name, and then you sign up to kick in a few bucks every month for the show. Think of it as a voluntary subscription. A subscription that you don't have to pay for, of course, but that you choose to pay for because you dig the show and you won't miss a few bucks at the end of the month. If just 1% of our listenership would kick in the price of a cup of coffee every month, it would make an immense difference. So thank you to everybody who is doing that now or has done it in the past. And if you're not in a place or you can contribute in that way, that's fine. You could still help us out in a couple of ways that are totally free. First, you could leave us a rating in the iTunes store, or second, you could simply tell a friend about the show. Spread the word about the show to somebody who you think might dig it. The simple math on those two things is that they will help me much more than they will be a pain in the ass for you. Okay, I'll end all the harassment there. Thanks for stopping by this week. I really hope you enjoy this chat with Steve. Our guest this week has been making music for 40 years as a recording artist and legendary live performer. Steve Poltz hails from Palm Springs, but got his start playing music in the clubs and coffee shops around San Diego. He began touring a band that he formed called the Rugburns, and then ended up pairing up with 90s folk music star Jewel before she hit it big. Steve penned the song You Were Meant for Me with her, which went on to become a multi-platinum Billboard smash. He's recorded for Mercury, Red House, and Compass Records. He's toured with Bob Dylan, Rufus Wainwright, Lisa Loeb, the Bare Naked Ladies. He's toured with Bob Dylan, Rufus Wainwright, Lisa Loeb, the Bare Naked Ladies, and many others. Saving Country Music says that he's morphed into a bona fide underground folk hero. Rolling Stone Country calls him bracingly funny. American Songwriter says that he has an incredible way with a comedic lyric and ability to spin a ripping tale. I got a chance to catch up with Steve on the phone earlier this week and hear about his journey so far. Steve Poltz, thanks so much for being a part of the Working Songwriter podcast. You're originally from Canada before you emigrated from there and moved down to San Diego to go to school. What did music look like for you growing up there above the border?
Well, my formative years were spent in Southern California. So we moved when I was just a little kid. I was lucky enough to keep dual citizenship. And my dad was in the Air Force in Canada. And then he got out of that. And my mom was from Cape Breton and then taught English in Montreal. And she moved down. So I was lucky to be able to keep my dual citizenship. But I grew up in the desert and in Southern California, Pasadena, and then Palm Springs.
What a trip. What was Palm Springs like back then?
It was awesome because, I mean, like, you don't know any better when you're a kid, but I switched Catholic schools. I went from St. Rita's in Pasadena to St. Teresa's. And it was really cool because I was an altar boy at St. Teresa's Church, and Bob Hope would come in on Easter Sunday, and I'd get to be Bob Hope's altar boy when he came up for communion. And he was like an Easter Sunday Catholic. He would go to church just on Easter Sunday. And I was raised kind of really Catholic as a little kid. And I remember going, I hope he's gone to confession, because you need to go to confession before you get your communion. Like, we would talk about things like that. And then he would come up for communion and the priest would say, he would give us a lecture before. He'd say, when you hold the plate under and the priest says the body of Christ. And back then you would stick your tongue out and go, amen. And the priest would put the host, and the host is Jesus's body. That's what they tell you the host represents. And they put it on the tongue. And they say, if that host falls off the tongue, you got to catch it on the plate, because if it hits the ground, Jesus is dead. And that shit's on you. And so your job was to do that. And so, like, the day Bob Hope came in, I got to be the lead altar boy. And so he came up. And so imagine this, Bob Hope comes up and the priest is there. And he goes, the body of Christ. And then Bob Hope goes, amen, Father. And he looks at me and winks and goes, and then the priest takes the host, puts it. Now, obviously, there's slapback saliva coming off the tongue. This is obviously pre-COVID days. Like, they just hold their hands out now. And then the host started rolling, and in slow motion, I was like, no. And I dove and caught it before it hit the ground. So that's the only reason you and I are able to talk, is because I saved Jesus for all humanity. And then Bob Hope would tip us $5, like we were Maitre D's or something, because we were the altar boys, and then we go to Thrifty's and get an ice cream cone.
So was Palm Springs, like, that strikes me as Bob Hope and other people, like, kind of the jet set from LA would come out to Palm Springs to, like, play golf and blow off steam, basically?
Yeah, so like on Halloween, we'd go trick-or-treating, and we'd go to Liberace's house. And Liberace, he had a house there, and so did Elvis Presley and Sinatra. And so we would go trick-or-treating, and Liberace would be standing there, and he'd have like that boa around his neck, and his boyfriend would be behind him, and they would hand out like full-size Snickers bars. So I would show up and be a ghost, and then I'd switch with my friends, and I'd change into Batman to come back to get another Snickers bar. And he would stand there and just be like, hello, kids, have a Snickers bar. And his steps up to his place were piano keys with both black and white keys, but like winding around like Alice's Wonderland. And it was so cool. And I loved Liberace. Like, whenever he was on TV, like, my friends were more into Black Sabbath and stuff. but I loved Liberace. I loved Streisand. I loved Liza Minnelli, all that kind of stuff as a little kid. Because my uncle, he moved down from Cape Breton in Canada and lived with us. And I grew up with a gay uncle, Louis. And so he was like kind of one of my mentors. So I just thought everybody liked Streisand and Minnelli and Liberace and played piano and was a little bit dramatic and had a boyfriend. So it was super cool because Uncle Louis would come and stay with us, and he would, my mom was kind of freaked out because it was the 60s, right? It would be like 1966. And my other uncle had come home from Vietnam. Uncle Steven was living with us. And I remember my mom was like, your Uncle Steve's living with us. He's home from Vietnam and he has VD. And your Uncle Louie's living with us and he's gay. Don't use the towels. And so I would just like go outside and kind of hose off. And that's probably when I started writing songs, because I'd be standing outside with a hose, scared to use the towels. And my Uncle Louie, the gay man, was totally vain about his ears, and they stuck out really wide. So I remember he got surgery to make them lay flat. And he came home and he looked like he had a turban on his head. And he would play piano and he'd have this turban thing around his head. And so I was so scared I was going to have to get ear surgery. As a little kid, I walked around like this all day. And to this day, my ears are super flat because I pressed them. I was so neurotic, I was going to have to get the surgery. Every day I hold my hands against my head because I didn't have a lot of friends because I was into Streisand and Minnelli. So I just hang out alone and with my hands over my ears, completely freaked out to use the towels or anything. So I grew up kind of scared.
Now, wait, when you started writing songs, were you starting to like write them in that vein, rather than the quote unquote, serious singer-songwriter vein? You were doing it more in like the presentational kind of piano bar, Liza Minnelli type vibe, Liberace type vibe?
Yeah, because my uncle would teach voice. So he taught me to sing from my diaphragm, which was probably the most important thing because I've never had vocal problems my whole life. Like I can do 70 shows straight without a day off. I'm superhuman when it comes to that. And so as a kid, I grew up singing. I would play like the part of Tevye and Fiddler on the Roof. And my uncle would have me at the age of 7 going, if I were a rich man, digga, 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 dum. And he'd have me act it out. And then I do the part of Oliver at these recitals. And I didn't know I was hanging out with all these older gay men that would just love it when I'd hold my hands out. My uncle would say, do it again. And I'd go, please, sir, may I have some more? May I have some more? And my uncle would go, he wants more. It was really dramatic. So like my first song I wrote was for my dog. And it was just because my dog was my best friend because he just always hung out with me. And so the song was called Hunson a Dunson. His name was Bojo, but I called him Honey. And then that shortened to Hunson. So my first rhyme scheme as a songwriter was, what do I rhyme with Hunson? So I came up with this whole idea of a Dunson. But see, I was only listening to the radio and I was into Herman's Hermits. And I thought if you wrote a song, it had to have an English accent. And so my first song I wrote as a little kid was Hunson a Dunson. And it went like this. Hunson a Dunson, where's your bunsen? I thought I saw it the other day. Was it walking or was it talking? I don't know. I could not say. And then Bojo would jump up and lick my face and paw me to do it again. So I'd have to like rewrite it in a country vein or something else.
Yeah.
So that was how I got started. And I was playing classical guitar at the same time, Started playing when I was 6.
Gut string. Oh, wow. So you started playing guitar super early then, 6 years old.
Yeah, 6 years old. Because I had met Elvis Presley, and Elvis Presley lived in Palm Springs. And I rode my bike on the tarmac and got to meet him at his plane with my sister. And he thought my sister was really cute and hugged her for a long time. And then picked me up, put me on his shoulders and hung out with us. I think that was like around 69 when it was Comeback Special Elvis, when I met Elvis. But
now wait, you can just ride your bike onto a tarmac. That's like my favorite detail of the story is that you could just ride your bike onto a tarmac.
You could ride your bike on the tarmac. There was no security. I remember my parents flew us to Hawaii on a vacation, and my mom was like, we're sitting in the smoking section. I was like, but I have asthma. Too bad. And we'd sit there. and they'd call it a smoking section. So you could sit in the non-smoking section. There's one seat in front of the smoking section.
Right.
And
Right.
I'd be like this. And I remember we get in my parents' car and I go, do I have to wear a seatbelt? And she goes, no, those things are uncomfortable. I'll protect you. So she'd hold her arm out and she'd always be smoking. And I go, can you roll the windows down? It's too cold. It's too cold. No,
Yeah.
just deal with it.
Now, when you ride your bike on the tarmac to see Elvis, did you know who Elvis was? Like, did you understand the gravitas that he carried with him at that time?
He was my hero. It was
Uh,
1969. I'd probably seen every Elvis movie. I
wow.
lived for Elvis Presley. I was so excited when I met him. And I remember he goes, sounds like your kid's been a running. And I was like, yeah, to catch you, Elvis. And man, when he picked me up and held me, gave me his autograph, he was so nice. He was never in a hurry until finally one of his assistants came up and goes, come on, boss, we got to go.
Yeah.
He gets in the limousine. And I've never forgotten this. As he drove off in the limousine, he leaned his head out. He had a perfect pompadour, sideburns. He was wearing black leather. And he was waving to us outside of the limousine until it just disappeared like a mirage. It was amazing.
Oh man, that is like something out of a damn movie. But because you had met him and because you were into it, kind of got you into guitar at an early age?
I got into guitar because my Uncle Louie, the guy I told you about, he took me to the Hollywood Bowl to see a classical guitarist named Julian Bream.
Uh-huh.
My uncle was really into the arts.
Yeah,
And so
sounds like.
he took me to see Godspell, Jesus Christ Superstar, Hair, all these plays. And he took me to see, he would always take me to Hollywood Bowl. He took me to see Sarah Vaughan, Carmen McRae, Ella Fitzgerald. But the Julian Bream concert of all of them stood out because it was one guy with a nylon string guitar, his left foot on a footstool, perfect position of the guitar. And he was just nailing it, a single spotlight. And when I left, I remember I said, Uncle Louie, I want to play classical guitar. I don't want to play piano. And he got me a box set, 3 records of Julian Bream. I wish I still had it. And
I'll
I would
bet.
listen to
Yeah.
them all day. So I thought every kid was kind of raised that way. But
Yeah.
no, they were all different. And so by the time I got to school, like junior high and high school, I was in choirs like the Madrigals, the top singing club. We were called the Madrigals, and we would travel to other schools. And I was in drama and the hiking club, but I was also on the wrestling team. So I couldn't tell anybody on the wrestling team I was in Madrigals and in drama, or they would kick my ass. But I loved it all. Like I was really active, you know?
Yeah. That's beautiful. So tell me about, you really got your career as we know it started in once you moved to San Diego to go to school. Can you kind of describe the scene on the ground music wise when you got to San Diego for college?
Yeah. So when I got to San Diego for college, I got this job at Round Table Pizza. And Round Table Pizza was in La Mesa, California. And I was going to Grossmont College and San Diego State. And the reason I was going to 2 colleges is because Grossmont College had a classical guitar department. And there was this teacher named Miles Moynier, who I knew was the teacher, the head guy there. So I went there to take classical guitar from him. And then I was also going to San Diego State because my sister went there and she was a DJ at KCR. You always got to have an older sibling that's into music. So it's like 1979, 1980, and all the music's changing so fast. And so it turned out to be a pretty brilliant choice, just by happenstance on my part, that I met this guy, Miles Moynier, because I was a pretty decent classical guitarist and could sight read and was playing like Bach's Bourrée and all these different pieces. And he said, hey, I can't always cover for my gigs. And he was playing at a Mexican restaurant called Por Favor and another restaurant called El Amigo. So he goes, can you fill in for me at Por Favor and at El Amigo if I ever can't make it? And I go, yeah. So my first gigs were sitting in the corner of this Mexican restaurant with just a mic over my classical guitar and playing all these classical guitar pieces. And I wasn't even old enough to drink, but they'd give me a glass of wine or a beer, and you'd get paid $25 and 2 meals if I wanted them. So I'd get a meal when I came in at like 5, and I'd sit in the corner and play. Every once in a while, people would clap, but it was just
Yeah.
like they'd be talking over it. I didn't care. And I would just play these classical guitar pieces, take one break, play a whole nother set again. And these were long sets, like 90-minute sets. And then I'd eat another meal, and I got to know all the cooks, the Hispanic cooks, and all the waitresses I got to know. And so at Por Favor, there was this one waitress named Brenda, and she was like probably 44 years old, and I was like 19. And I would play classical guitar. And then one night, for some reason, I had learned how to sing Time in a Bottle by Jim Croce. And I go, I'm going to sing it. I don't know why I did it, because I wasn't supposed to sing. So I'm in the corner and I sing Time in a Bottle, and the whole restaurant clapped. I've never forgotten that. And then afterwards, Brenda, the 44-year-old waitress, was like, that was really beautiful. You should sing more. And I go, really? You really think I should? All right. And it kind of gave me this confidence. And then she was like, do you want to come over to my house after we get off work? We can smoke a joint, have a beer. And I go, all right. She goes, my old man's out of town. He's at a biker rally in Sturgis. He rides with a motorcycle gang. Why don't you come over to my house and we'll just smoke a joint and hang out. You can play me songs on guitar. And I go, all right. So I go over to her house and we smoke a joint. One thing leads to another. There's pictures all over the house of her boyfriend, the scariest looking biker, holding guns, biker rallies and stuff. And then she goes, let's go in my room. I got a water bed. So bada bing, bada bang. We end up in bed together. And then I hear this motorcycle pull up about 45 minutes later. And she goes, oh my God, you got to get out of here. It's my old man. I go, what? What do you mean? I thought he was in Sturgis. I don't know. He's home. So I remember running out of the window, and I left one of my shoes in the house. That's why I called my major label debut One Left Shoe. Nobody knows this, but I ran out of the window. And then I never showed up at that restaurant again to play my gigs because a biker was going to kill me. And I heard he was looking for me. And to this day, so this is dude, because I'm 61 now, I'll be 62 in February. So to this day, if I see a dude on a motorcycle, and if he was 90 years old, because that's what her old man would be now, he'd be 90 and she'd probably be like 86. I'm still scared. So I'm going to get a bullet shot at me if he's still alive. Like maybe he has one of those voice boxes from smoking too much, like Sonny Barger or something.
Right. Wow. But I guess you learn really quick though, getting to sing a tune. That's great. You get a bunch of applause. You get to go home and smoke a joint with a beautiful chick and go to sleep with her. I mean, that I guess you got a taste of the troubadour's life there, huh?
I did. I got a taste of the rock and roll life. And then it was my next job. I kept playing at the El Amigo Ballroom, but then I got a job at Round Table Pizza. And at Round Table Pizza, you would have a microphone. And that was kind of where I learned microphone control. Because I've always thought, like, you got three muscles. As a songwriter, you got your songwriting muscle. And you got to nurture it because it keeps the neural pathways in the brain open. I used to think you needed inspiration. You need to wait for the muse to hit you. But I've changed that line of thinking. I really believe we need deadlines, and we're reporters. And if we have deadlines and we keep doing it, it's a muscle. So you got the songwriting muscle, you got the performance muscle, which, okay, you're your own factory. You're making these widgets. You're creating these songs, but you're also your own R&D department because you're doing research for the songs, and you're your sales department. You got to go to the trade shows. The trade shows are the gigs, and you've got to peddle your wares. When you write this song, you want to disseminate it. So how do you do that? You got to learn how to record. You got to learn how to act in a studio, how to be better. So you have these three muscles, and you don't want one of them to atrophy because you need them all to keep your factory running. So I learned about microphone control at Round Table Pizza because when I got hired there, the manager was like, your voice sounds really cool. You sound kind of like Michael Douglas. Will you be the one to call the pizzas out on the mic? And I was like, yeah. So they had this little switch on the mic, and I go, Jameson, party of four, your Hawaiian pizza's ready. Come on and pick it up. And I would practice all these vocal inflections. And the manager was like 24 and I was 19. And I'm in San Diego, and he goes, you look a lot like me. Let me give you my driver's license and I'll get another one and I can have a drinking buddy. Now, I looked nothing like this guy. He had red curly hair and freckles, but I was like, all right. So he goes, go back into the walk-in freezer. Let me time how quick you can slug a whole pint of beer down. I'll time you because we have records we're trying to set here. This is the manager. And so I would do that, and I'd slam down 3 beers. I'd get kind of buzzed, and I would go out and call for people's pizza. And then I remember one night he goes, "Hey man, have you ever tried cocaine?" And I was like, "No, but I want to. But I'm going to college. I don't have any money to afford cocaine, but I've always wanted to try it." He goes, "Come over to my house afterwards. I'm bringing all the employees over. We're going to have a cocaine party. All you need is like $10 to chip in. I'll give you your first line." And I go, "But I can't go to my ATM and get any money out. I need it for college. And I only got like $150 in my account." So he brings us over to his house, and Tom Petty had just come out with Damn the Torpedoes. And he goes, "Wait till the chorus kicks in." And he cuts up these lines, and I remember seeing the lines and the way they look. And I hear all of a sudden this voice. He puts it down on the record on the vinyl. He goes, "We got something. We both know it. We don't talk too much about it." And then by the time I go, "Is this the chorus yet?" Because the song had just come out. Finally, he goes, "Not yet." When he does the chorus, snort that line. All of a sudden I hear, "You don't have to live like a refugee." And in slow motion, I leaned down. I was like, I waited about maybe 3 minutes, and I looked at him. I go, "Let's go to my ATM. Fuck school." And I took all the money out. "Let's get more coke." So we got more coke, and then I had to go back to Round Table Pizza the next week, and I got really drunk. And this song had just come out called the Rodeo Song. And it was that song that goes, "Well, it's 40 below, and I don't give a fuck. Got a heater in my truck, and I'm off to the rodeo. It's an element left and an element right." Do you remember that song?
No.
"You piss me off, you fucking jerk. You get on my nerves." It was this Canadian song. They would bleep out all the F words. It'd be played on KGB.
Yeah.
So I got really drunk, and I thought it would be a good idea to sing that song. And unbeknownst to me, the owner of Round Table Pizza was in the audience that night I called it the audience. He was eating pizza, but in my mind, it was an audience. It was a gig, and I sang it. And then the next morning, I was unceremoniously woken up at like 7:30 in the morning, and I answered. He goes, "Is this Steve Poltz?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "This is Mr. McDonald, owner of Round Table Pizza. You need to come in and pick up your check." And I was so naive. I go, "We're getting paid early?" And he goes, "No, you're fired. We need pizza makers, not entertainers." And I swear to God, Joe, I go, "I'm an entertainer?" I was so happy, and I went and picked up my check, and I was like, I'm onto something. So I had the fake ID, and I'm in San Diego, and I start going out to see Mojo Nixon, the Beat Farmers, all these different bands, because music was in this big state of change. And, there was Elvis Costello. I just come out with My Aim Is True. My sister got me that record, and I got turned on to this whole other type of music. And the Beat Farmers were kind of my heroes. They were like one of the original, alternative country bands out there. And Country Dick Montana was like my mentor. He was this big, imposing presence who played drums in the Beat Farmers, but had a deep voice. And he would come to the Rugburns gigs, and he'd put his arm around me and go, "Remember, scumbag, it's a big stage. Use it all." Like kind of teaching me about performance and getting out there. And Mojo Nixon was just like going nuts at the time, playing all these gigs. And it was such a great time to be alive and to be in a border town like San Diego, 25 minutes from Tijuana, where we'd cross the border every weekend and go over there. And that's where the Rugburns, we started playing in Tijuana, and we would start our tours in Tijuana, Mexico at this place called Mr. Crown's. And all these underage kids would come in because they could drink 25 minutes across the border.
Right.
And so I was kind of, I was completely into music from the moment I realized I was able to do it. I was like, I was a lifer.
Okay, so it didn't take much convincing at all. Like as soon as you started the Rugburns, you guys start touring a little bit. You're just like, yeah, this is it. Like there's no college, there's no me managing a Round Table Pizza anytime soon. Like this is it. I'm into to play these tunes.
Well, I did graduate from college. I ended up graduating from a Catholic university called the University of San Diego, because I think my parents wanted me to be a Catholic priest. They were pretty Catholic, but that didn't pan out. And so I went to this Catholic university, and I was playing guitar. I started a classical guitar duo with this guy, Rob Driscoll, and that's who I formed the Rugburns with. And so I went to college to sort of placate my parents. And then I took a job as a plastics pipe nipple salesman, because
of course
it was like available. And so my parents were proud because I had this sales job. But the first thing I did when I got in, I said to the guy that hired me, I said, "Hey, I play Saturday nights at this bar called the Mission Beach Club." And the guy loaned me $1,500, the owner of the company, to buy my first PA because the club didn't have a PA. And I would pay him back on Mondays, $50 a week. And then I worked there 3 years. And after 3 years, I'd read this book called The Razor's Edge by William Somerset Maugham. Great
Yep.
book.
Wonderful book.
And so I read that and it changed my life, because there's the protagonist in the book is Larry Darrell's his name. And he says he's going to go bum around Europe. That's what he wants to do. It's after the stock market crashes. And so I said to my boss, I need a little time off. He goes, "What do you need, a week?" And I go, "Well, I'm going to go to Europe." He goes, "How much do you need? 2 weeks?" I go, "No, 9 months. And he goes, "Why?" And I said, "I want to play guitar on the streets." And he goes, "Like a bum?" And I go, "Yeah, like a bum." And I had this college degree and I didn't give a shit about it. Selling nipples. I was a nipple salesman. I'd seen the movie The Graduate, and they plastics. When they say plastics, I just sort of took the heed. So I end up going over to Europe. I'm playing guitar on the streets. And that was when everything really changed, because I realized if you look at inside your mind and you open up a sliding glass door on the side of your mind and take a sideways step from your forward path you think you're on, you realize there's all these other options. And what I learned was, oh my God, you give me a guitar, leave me on the street anywhere, I can start playing. People will put money in my case, and someone will eventually come up and go, "You want to stay at our house? This is fun. Let's go have a party." And everything will be taken care of because of this weird gift I have.
Yes.
And so then I went, screw pipe nipples, screw this. I came back, finished out the job, and then I've never had a real job since. I've been doing this forever.
I think it's so important for young songwriters and performers to just play on the street. I used to do it all the time in my teens and early 20s, and I had the same realization of just, at the end of the day, if I have a guitar in an open case, and the weather's okay, I can make a couple $100 a day. Like, that's worst case scenario. I can go out onto the street and make a couple $100 a day, and it gives you a lot of options. Like you said, you take that side step out of your mind, and it's some security there. You're at least going to be able to afford a hostel and a hot meal.
Yes. And I'm so lucky to be able to do this. I first whet my appetite for the road right when I got out of high school. So I got out of high school. I was on the wrestling team. I became the captain of the wrestling team. I finished my senior year at 106 pounds. And I was in choir, madrigals. I was in drama. But this singing group came to our high school in 1976, because I graduated in 78. And my sister joined up with them. They were called Up With People. And she left and went away with Up With People, which was this singing group that would travel around the world doing these totally corny songs. Like, they played the Super Bowl years ago. But it was not a Christian group. It wasn't religious. It was just really these songs, you know. And so they came to my high school in 78, and I auditioned and I played classical guitar, and they accepted me and gave me a scholarship. So I moved to Tucson, where I rehearsed with this cast, and we were the Latin American cast. So we lived in Mexico and in Argentina and played a little bit in the States. And we'd sing that song, Up With People. You meet them wherever you go, up with people. They're the best kind of folks who know. But that's where I learned about load in, and about being on. We have these buses, like these Greyhound buses. Like, they weren't like these cool rock star buses. We just have these seats. And we would show up in a city, and a host family would take us in Mexico. So I'd be living with a Mexican family in like La Paz or in Mexico City or Guadalajara, Culiacan, anywhere. And I was starting to speak Spanish, and we would play bull rings, and then we'd load in, load out. And then one person from the cast would get to go do PR, and you'd leave the cast for a week and a half early and do television and radio. And I got to do it in Buenos Aires, Argentina, which was amazing. And so I got out of that, and then I had gone to college, but I'd already it had whet my appetite for what I knew I wanted to do. So by the time I started playing on the streets, I just realized, man, I'll never have to work again. Like, yes. I can always do this.
Are you stuck in a rut? Are you tired of listening to that Jimmy Buffett 20th Century Masters CD over and over again and need some new music? Are you sick of making hamburger help or beef stroganoff for dinner every night and you want something new to cook? What you are looking for, my friends, is the Enthusiast Digest. That's my monthly newsletter, which arrives in your inbox the first Sunday morning of every month, bursting with musical recommendations, poetry selections, recipes and cooking techniques for my favorite dishes, and items of general interest culled from the vast cesspool that is the internet. The Enthusiast Digest is free to subscribe to. If you dig the poetry that you hear on this show and the artists that you're hearing from, you'll dig the newsletter because I approach it with the exact same sensibility of curation. Go to joepugmusic.com/newsletter today to sign up for free. That is joepugmusic.com/newsletter. It takes approximately 15 seconds to sign up for a free newsletter that will enrich the first Sunday of your month with a veritable cornucopia of new and delightful recommendations. That's the Enthusiast Digest, the first Sunday of every month. Sign up for free at joepugmusic.com/newsletter. Now that the internet has completely fractured all of our culture into micro-segments, it's difficult to remember how stunningly famous one person could be when there was still a monoculture. Hearing Steve talk about Elvis Presley, disembark from his plane in Palm Springs, and have a neighborhood kid pedal up to him on his bike for a picture, it rekindled my fascination with that bygone era of American celebrity. As you'll hear from Steve in our next interview segment, he felt the bright glare of the monoculture spotlight in the 1990s when he co-wrote Jewel's hit song, You Were Meant for Me, and played in her band as it took over the world. Thinking of Steve brushing shoulders in that world reminded me of this poem by Steve Orlin about fame that reaches to the level of the sublime. It's entitled Celebrity. Tony Bennett. He shines through the airport like a retreating star. Through lounge after lounge, he is a slowly disappearing glow as our faces rise. Nodding, we raise our voices, we wave. It's like one of those waves at a football game, all the bodies part of the rhythm of what we missed and had not known we missed, and we finally belong. And he too, in his way, with his deep, immutable tan and hair hardly a shade too dark, walking somehow too slowly, like an aging ex-champ who enters the ring and shadow boxes for the crowd, dressed in a dark blue suit that shows just how large and powerful he really is, larger than any of us, for we are finding ourselves particularly small today, quite ordinary, on the verge of panic actually, fearful of the very sky. You end up rendezvousing and playing a bunch of music with Jewel. You co-write this massive smash hit with her, and it also lines up with the time when it seems like the music business is the most powerful that it ever was and ever will be, in America. So can you kind of speak to that collaboration with her, and then also kind of speak to what it felt like to be in that version of the music business versus all of the other versions you've seen since then?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm in the Rugburns at the time, and we're receiving sort of a modicum of success. We get signed to Zappa's label. It's called Bizarre Planet Records.
Really? That's rad. That's really cool.
And then we get signed to Priority Records, which was the indie rock division of that band. That band straight out of Compton, Fuck the Police. What are they called?
NWA.
NWA. Yeah, we get signed to their label after the Zappa thing. but they have an indie rock division. And so we would go into that CNN building downtown where all the rappers would come in. There'd be armed guards out front because some angry rapper would come in and bust the place up with a baseball bat. So this girl, Nancy Levin, signed us. So we had this whole indie rock deal going. And so I'm living in San Diego and I write this song with this other guy and it's called Hitchhiker Joe. And we get a video made that's really cool. It gets played on 120 Minutes on MTV. And we're playing all these indie clubs. We're starting in Tijuana and going all the way out to, CBGBs, back and forth, every shithole club across America. And then I came home one day and I go into this coffee house called Java Joe's. And we would do late night poker games there. And there was all these more folk singer type guys and girls that were there. And they were kind of influenced by that scene at the time that had just started happening with like David Wilcox and John Gorka and all these songwriters that were more like serious, sincere folk. And so I went in there and I had this sore throat. It was like midnight and Java Joe's running this poker game back in this back room. And I would show up in my pajamas to play poker. And so I show up and there's a girl behind the counter and she's the barista there. And I go, hey, I'm Steve Poltz. And she goes, yeah, I know who you are. She goes, I'm Jewel. I sing songs too, but I work here making coffee. And I go, oh, cool. Where are you from? She goes, Homer, Alaska. One thing leads to another. We start talking and there's a bit of a spark there between us. And so we end up going down to Mexico a lot together, going surfing. And then she moves in with me and she's not signed yet. And she says, how can I get a following like the Rugburns? And I go, well, go find your music would fit really well in a coffee house. But I was always a believer, and I did this with the Rugburns. Find a bar that nobody plays at and make it your own scene. Like, don't go to a place. I've always been a big believer in find really this good. Weird bar.
Yeah, that's really
make
good.
it your scene and play there don't miss every Friday, every Thursday, whatever day it's going to be. Play there every night that you say you're going to be there. And if you're good, a scene's going to happen because people are drawn to energy.
Yes.
So Jewel heeds my advice and finds this place called the Interchange. She starts playing there. After a year, limousines start showing up, and it's Tommy Mottola giving her a guitar, Danny Goldberg from Atlantic Records, you name it, everybody, Ahmet Erdogan. People are coming out to this little coffee house.
Crazy.
And there becomes a bidding war. And like you said, it was the time when the music industry was the most powerful. We'd switched to CDs. You had CD format, you had cassette format, and you had vinyl format. So you were getting 3 different types of sales. MTV and VH1 ruled everything.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
They were star makers. There was a velvet rope mentality. If they deemed you worthy to cross that velvet rope, they could try to make you a star. Everybody was getting tired of grunge because, first you had Kurt Cobain and you had Eddie Vedder, you had Pearl Jam and Nirvana, and then there started to be all these other kind of copycat bands, Candlebox, and, It goes on and on and on. And it would be like watered down grunge.
Right.
And people got tired of that. And then they heard these pretty female voices and it was like a sea change happened. So what happened was I'd gone down to Mexico with Jewel and we used to stay in this really beautiful little hotel right on the beach. And we wrote this song called You Were Meant for Me. Now, at the same time, we wrote another song called Food Stamp Love. And Food Stamp Love, I thought was going to be the hit. It was about a lover who doles her love out to you like it's food stamps, like you're on a government assistance program. And the chorus went, I'm sick of your food stamp love. I'm sick. And I loved the song. And that was cool. And so we come back and Jewel ends up signing with Atlantic. And I'm talking to Danny Goldberg and a producer whoever she was going to use. She's interviewing these producers. I was like, Food Stamp Love's the hit. And me and Jewel had written this other song called Daddy, She's a Goddess, about this hillbilly couple that kidnaps this woman and the whole family has sex with her. And they tie her up to a dartboard. It's called Daddy, She's a Goddess. I go, that's a hit. And we yodel in it, me and Jewel, because Jewel's really sick and twisted. People don't know this. Like, she has one of the sickest minds ever. So we go, Daddy, she's a goddess. Can we keep her tonight? Her nose don't drip like me. Daddy, she's a goddess. And Atlantic Records is like, no, fuck no. And they go, You Were Meant for Me's the hit. So then Neil Young here sees Jewel play somehow, and he goes, hey, Jewel, why don't you come live at my ranch and make your record at my ranch? And she goes, can I bring Poltzy with me? He wrote some songs with me and he plays guitar on some of these songs. And he's like, yeah, bring Poltz. You guys can live in Elliot's place on his property. Elliot was his manager, and
Right.
Elliot was going through a divorce and was out of town, going to be gone for a few months. So Neil goes, come live at the ranch. I'll have Ben Keith produce the record. Ben Keith was in the Stray Gators. He also played steel guitar on Patsy Cline's Crazy, just as a little cool thing.
Wow.
So Ben Keith is this great pedal steel player. You got the Stray Gators playing on it. You got Tim Drummond on bass, rest in peace. Kenneth Buttrey on drums. Kenneth Buttrey is the drummer that played on Rainy Day Women, number 12 and 38. So when I first met him, I go, hey, dude, do that lick. And on the drums, he goes, ra-da-da-da-da-da-da. And he did it for me. So we're living at Neil Young's ranch. We make this record. You Were Meant for Me. They're going, we're gonna make this a crossover single. And I didn't even know what any of these terms meant at the time. So Jewel has this first song that's an alternative radio hit called Who Will Save Your Soul. Mm-hmm. So at this time, nobody knows who she is. She's going out in her car. God bless her, because Atlantic actually stuck with the record. First year, for a whole year, the record only sold probably 30,000 copies. But Jewel had this crazy work ethic. They go, do you want to go out and open for Peter Murphy from Bauhaus? She goes, yeah. So she would go do these shows, and I'd be with her on the road. And I would watch her play in front of all these goths who are waiting for Peter Murphy, their god. And she would come out with an acoustic guitar and go, I just want you to know I believe in angels. And by the end of the show, she would have these goth guys crying. Like, for whatever reason, it was working.
Yeah.
And so you watched it slowly build. So I remember we opened for Liz Phair. We opened for Ani DeFranco. And I was watching her star rise, rise, rise. Next thing you know, You Were Meant for Me. They go, we're going to make this a single, but we need to re-record it with Peter Collins, this pop producer. So this is when I first start seeing how the machine really works. They were like, the record version, we can do it better. We'll make it more popped out. So Peter Collins, if you look at his resume, he's done all these hit singles. They go, hey, we want to leave Steve Poltz's guitar part because we like the way it sounded. I had played these harmonics on it, and I was like, what? I can't believe they're keeping it. So they keep the guitar part, and they go, we want to get Flea to play bass on it, because Flea's a great bass player. Like, really, he's got such good instincts. People know of him as, what I got to give it to your mama. But like, he does some really melodic stuff. So he plays bass on it. Peter Collins produces it. Now, Sean Penn had directed the first video for You Were Meant for Me. You can find it online, but it didn't blow up and do anything. And Sean Penn had stole her from me. We were going out, and then I remember we went over to his house, and we did the Leno show that night. We were in LA, and Sean Penn then comes and watched Jewel open for Liz Phair at the Wiltern Theater. And then Sean Penn's backstage. He goes, come to my trailer. His house had burned down because he and Madonna had gotten divorced. So his house burned down. He's living in an Airstream trailer. And I remember I'm smoking a joint next to Sean Penn, and we're taking a piss. And I was like, is he looking at my dick? And we're looking at each other, and I was so high. I remember smoking the weed. I saw the future. I was like, this fucking guy's going to steal her. Next thing I know, like 2 weeks later, she's on a private jet with Jack Nicholson and Sean Penn going to Cannes Film Festival. And I was like so broken up. I remember I was in a rug burn. And if we passed one of those Jewel Osco stores, I was like, warn me if you see it, because I couldn't even see the name. And I was like brokenhearted. So anyways, then Jewel and Sean Penn, it doesn't last. And so she goes, Poltzy, will you be in the video for You Were Meant for Me? We're redoing it. And I was like, yeah. I mean, to this day, she's still one of my closest friends. She would laugh at this story. I love her. I have nothing but good things to say. So we end up redoing the video. So if you look at the official video of it during the MTV days, I'm the dude in the video with Jewel. I'm not wearing a shirt. I'm like touching her face. It's like this thing, and she's in this blue dress with all these arms nailed to the ground with I'm talking like it's like a $300,000 video from those days. Yeah. And I know, because I was signed to Mercury and I got to make one of those videos for myself. So I watched this song start going. It becomes like the longest running song on the Billboard Top 100. It sells 15 million records. It's insane. People are buying it on singles. Remember singles? Cassette singles? They're buying singles. They're buying 45 records of it. They're buying the vinyl record, and they're buying the CD. You're getting all these sales coming in. And in the meantime, my BMI checks went from being like $17 from Rugburn songs called Sky Fucking Line of Toronto to all of a sudden everything is You Were Meant for Me. And I didn't even really have an address. Like I was always gone. So I was having my mail go to my mom and dad's house. And my dad's like, this has got to be a mistake. Steve, you got to call me right now. Like, there's no way you could make this kind of money. You? And he's like, you just got a check for like $136,000. He goes, I'll put it in my bank account. Next thing I know, I'm coming to my parents' house. They have a pool. They have like a new patio built and shit. And I didn't even care. Like the money was just coming in, and Jewel then takes me on tour with her. We're playing like Royal Albert Hall, the Gorge, Red Rocks. And she was so cool. She puts together this band. I play acoustic guitar in it. Tony Hall's on bass. Tony Hall played bass on that Bob Dylan album record, Oh Mercy. Brady Blades on drums.
Oh, wow.
Steve George is the keyboardist. Steve George was from the band Mr. Mister. He wrote that song, Take These Broken Wings. And he also wrote, Kyrie eleison in the splendor. And so we had this killing band. So we play Woodstock, all these places, and I got to be a part of this machinery. I go from like riding in a van to tour buses to private jets to staying at the Ritz-Carlton. I didn't even have to pick up my own baggage. It would be just waiting in my room. Guitar techs, the electric guitarist was Doug Pettibone, and we had this joke, like we're at Woodstock, 500,000 people, and the guy would come out and hand me my guitar, and if he wouldn't plug the cord in the back or do it to Doug at the same time the other guy, me and Doug in front of 500,000 people would look at each other like we didn't know how to plug the cord in. We had this long running gag in front of thousands and thousands of people. We'd go, and he'd point to the thing and the hole, and Jewel would be looking at us, waiting for us to start the song. And she's so funny. She loved that kind of shit. She would sometimes come over and plug it in. It was just crazy. It was so fun to be a part of that whole scene. And then eventually everything ends as it does. Yeah. And I remember the band ended and Jewel ended up using a different band years later after we toured the world, Singapore, Malaysia, Japan. And I remember I had this Volkswagen van. I went back out on the road alone, and I was touring and I was playing little clubs, and I was sleeping in my van in trailer parks. And I remember telling people, a month ago, I was on a private jet and in tour buses. And last night I was in a trailer park and I was arguing with the guy who owned it to get the price down from $25 to $18. So I'm calling this tour the Where Did It All Go Wrong tour. And that was the name of the tour. And then I had another tour called Catch a Falling Turd. And that was a good tour. But the funny thing is, Joe, I had just as much fun. Like it didn't matter. Numbers and all that, nothing matters. All that matters is the moment. And what are you doing with it when you play these songs, your creations? So it was super cool to be a part of that hit song.
Of course. Yeah. That's beautiful. And, I've always noticed that the many times I've seen you play live, I've seen you do it to a few people. I've seen you do it to hundreds of people. So I think I've seen you play to 1,000 or 2 people before, depending on where the venue is. And I've always felt that about your live show. You always bring the same intensity to no matter what the show is. It's a real learning experience for other songwriters to see you do that.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Yeah. Put my ear back in.
So, I want to get back to a point that you made earlier that I thought was really interesting. You were kind of talking about being a closed system, like your own factory, and you have like these three different aspects of it, which are the creative aspect, the performance/sales aspect, and then kind of like the technical aspect of it, of, how do we get through this medium of recording or radio or even a podcast, whatever. That creative aspect of it, how has that changed the most for you over the last couple of decades? Like, you're still creating very vital work right now, many decades later. How has that changed the most for you, your writing process?
Well, when I first started, I really I believed in writer's block when I first started. I believed that existed, and I go, man, I'm on a hot streak right now. But one of my best friends is this guy named Bob Schneider, and he lives in Austin, Texas. And we probably talk every other day. He just got a really close friend. Yep. And we both love to go on walks. So wherever we are, our hour conversation will be on the phone talking about movies, art, music, anything. And so he took me on tour with him because he had this band called the Scabs years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Bob Schneider did. And he started the Scabs because he saw the Rugburns play at Club Lingerie years ago. And he goes, those guys are having fun. And so he saw us, and then he started the Scabs. And then he took me on tour as his opening act. He had a hit, I call it a hit, a record that was doing well called Lonely Land.
Yeah.
And he was dating Sandra Bullock at the time. Mm-hmm. So he was getting a bit of press. He never broke huge, but we started the songwriting game on that tour, and we were going to Nashville. And he said, let's all write a song, and we got 24 hours, and we'll call it Cashville. You have to say Cashville. And then there was another one called Chinese Vacation. We had to say that in a song. And what I realized was having those deadlines changed my life. And it really changed me as a songwriter because I had something to do. And necessity is the mother of invention. And if you're in a songwriting group with other people, you want to impress them. And I sort of need a reason to have these deadlines. And so if you're writing, we used to do it every 24 hours. Now it's one song a week. But if you write 52 songs a year, not to mention other ones that aren't in the game, and you can hit 20% of those, you can have a record every year if you want, or 10 new songs you're doing that are really like arrows in your quiver. And so for me, the reason I don't want to die is because I want to see what songs I come up with in the next year. I'm always like, I wonder what will exist. Like if I look back 5 years ago, I didn't have this nuclear weapon that I own now, like a certain song that I know will kill. And so being able to, living in Nashville has helped a lot. I've been there almost 6 years, and having that Jewel hit really helped me in Nashville too, because people are like, oh, okay, you wrote that? Okay, you're in the club. We want you to co-write with Molly Tuttle or Billy Strings or somebody. Mm-hmm. People see that and they go, well, he did it once. Maybe something will happen again. Yeah. And so I've noticed that it's changed a lot because I'm able to always make a new record and always found a way to get the music out. And I've always had a really good booking agent. And so I've always been able to keep working. And every year my career gets a little better. I'm the tortoise from The Tortoise and the Hare. That's me. I have the most slow build career because I haven't hit my peak yet. I've never had a hit for myself. Mm-hmm. And I really don't want one because I've seen with Jewel what that was like. Yeah. Like, I don't want my records to be big. I have a really good career right now, and I'm happy with what they do. And expectations, I've had so many expectations before, and expectations are just future resentments under construction.
That's a great way of putting it, man. I mean, and yeah, like, you're so right. I mean, the pinnacle in a way, as far as personal enjoyment goes, is really just being able to go to any city that you want to. And there's some room, I don't know how big that room is. Maybe it holds 70 people, maybe it holds 300, but there's some room where that amount of people will come in and they all know your songs and they just want to talk to you after the show, or that right there. 'Cause yeah, I mean, for me, nothing ever blew up, but I've watched it happen to other people. And I don't think it ever really gets better than that small club thing where people are just really into what you want to do. And they're just coming out to see you. And like you said, like, the expectations aren't there to let you down 3 months from now, you know?
And I see your hats everywhere. You have these hats with this symbol on it.
Yeah.
And everybody, and I know it's a Joe Pug hat, and you have an army, a legion of fans out there that love what you do. And that to me is success, because you have people that love you, Joe. Like, they love you and they will come to see you. And I feel like that's the best kind of career. Like, I love playing, like in Toronto, I'll do 3 nights at the Dakota. I'd rather do 3 nights at the Dakota any day than some bigger thing, because I love those small rooms that fit 120 people in, but they're packed in. Yep. They're drinking. Yep. It's not so quiet that it's not a church, which I can't stand playing churches, but I love it when it's like a little bit chatty, but not too chatty. They're there to listen, and I can just be body and just take it to left places.
And then just stay there for 3 days too. I mean, not have to like leave that night, but like, I mean, nothing is more beautiful than the sound guy saying to you after the gig, like, all right, you can just leave it set up, going back to your hotel. Just like, sounds good, man.
And especially if the hotel's like a block away, too.
Block away. Oh, my gosh.
Isn't that the best? You know what I mean?
That's when I get hit by a truck and after I do my time in purgatory and go to heaven, I think that's what it'll be. Heaven will be me walking from the venue after a great little show to the hotel a block away. It's like kind of starting to snow outside a little bit. I got a glass of scotch waiting for me in the hotel room. I mean, that's heaven right there.
And they have good room service with an amazing restaurant.
Oh, man. Oh, yeah. That's it. That's it. Well, man, thank you so much for coming on to the show. It's been a blast talking to you, man. And I'm honored that you come on and do the show. I really appreciate it.
Likewise. I'm such a fan of yours. So thank you for having me on your show.
This week's show is brought to you by Bandzoogle. Built by musicians and for musicians, Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform to build a beautiful website for your music. Use promo code TWS, the initials of our podcast, TWS, to get 15% off the first year of any subscription. Steve Poltz's forthcoming album is entitled Stardust and Satellites. It comes out next month. You can go to Poltz.com, Poltz.com, and order yourself a copy. If before we meet again you sit down to write, please remember, an expensive drug habit is not a song, a compelling Instagram account is not a song, and most importantly, reverb is not a song. So let all that take care of itself, and for you, just keep your eye on the song.